The Middle Tennessee group of the Sierra Club Tennessee chapter presents this program, Electric Public Transportation, to encourage the adoption of electric vehicles and to move away from fossil fuels in our communities. Our presenter is Kent Minault, co-chair of the Chapter Transportation Committee. He tells us about new electric bus initiatives around the state. That's followed by audience discussion. Our program chair, Stephanie Perry, is our host.
Welcome. So this is the Middle Tennessee Sierra Club presentation on electric public transportation. And our presenter tonight is Ken Minault. He is the Sierra Club Tennessee Chapter Transportation Committee co-chair. Here is the agenda for this evening. We're going to have an introduction of Sierra Club, and then a County of the Month, and then the presentation with Ken. We'll also have an interactive Q&A session. There will be only a couple polls that we have, but we will allow you to open up your mic, or as we go along with the presentation, if you could go ahead and put your questions as you think of them into the chat, that would be very useful. It is going to be an hour-long presentation. It's recorded. It will be available on the Middle Tennessee, Sierra Club Middle Tennessee Group's website. We ask that all the mics are turned off during the presentation, and we will turn them back on during the Q&A session. So we're going to provide links for all the posts, and that any post that's in the presentation is going to be put in the chat. And then at the end of when this recording is posted on YouTube, then you can go ahead, we'll put them in the descriptions of the program, so you can have all the links there too. That's it. That's all I have on the agenda. Let's talk about Sierra Club. All right, so the Sierra Club has been around since 1892. They have about 3,800,000 members around the country who support and defend everyone's right for a healthy world, which I think is a very endearing, important statement. And before I continue on here, Jack, for some reason, it constantly makes sound when it's going into the meeting room. Is there a way to turn that off?
I have no idea. Okay. We've just got people coming in late. Sorry.
Maybe mute yourself, because I think you're the administrator. Thank you. All right. So back to the presentation. Our Middle Tennessee group has about 3,597 members, maybe slightly more. We cover around 29 counties, and you can see them here on the page. We host group hikes and outings, which for right now, it was going to start in July, but I think they've actually postponed it until, I think is it September or October? They're going to slowly go into it. August. Okay. August for small amounts, and then for the larger, it'll be limited amounts, and increase as we go along, right? And you also have to have, I think you have to have valid proof of your vaccination, and or that proof that you do not have COVID-19. We provide environmental educational programs like this one. We work on a variety of conservation issues at the local, statewide, and national levels, influencing legislation and environmental policies. We take an active role in addressing conservation issues in public forums and encourage others to do the same. If you want to learn more, please go to these links. We're going to try to get those into the comments area. Hanum is going to help us with all of the comments that are going to go into the links area. Okay. Right, County of the Month. So we have 29 counties that are in our group, and we always thought it's important for us to understand a little bit about each county. A lot of times we have a tendency of concentrating around more of the urban areas, but the rural areas are just as important and have just as severe environmental issues. So we just want to, just at a very high level, understand each county that's in our area. And this month, we're going to talk about Murray County. Murray County is located here in this, where this red dot is. It's just south of Williamson County. It has, it was established in 1807. It's currently a population of 99,000 people, and which is just it's actually square miles wide, is bigger than Williamson County, which I think is just wide. It's wider north and south. So it has a population density of 147 people per square mile. The areas is 616 square miles, which is larger than Williamson County and Davidson County, and which is equivalent to 394,000 acres. It's only about, of that acreage, only 0.4% of it is water. It has an elevation, the highest elevation is 1,300 feet, and the lowest is 540 feet. Let's talk about cities. I'm sort of going to jump across both sides. Cities and towns, the largest one is Columbia, Mount Pleasant, and Spring Hill. They are the leading cattle producing community in Tennessee. Then they also have a huge event every year. It's called, well, it used to be called Breeders' Day. Now it is called Mule Day, and it attracts over 200,000 people, and it is given the nickname of Columbia as the mule capital of the world. It is where they present many different farms will bring their mules in. It's become a huge event, a big music event too. The river, well, here is the seal for Murray County. The waterways are Duck River, Carter Creek. There's a lot of creeks in Murray County. Cathy's, Dogs, Fountains, Leaper Creek, Lick Creek, Richland Creek. They do have a salt lick in Murray County. No dams, no lakes. Their primary substrata is limestone. If you look at this topographical map, they're located somewhere right around here where the red dot arrow is. Which is in the central or Nashville Basin. They have 74 caves and 7 mines. Those mines produce phosphorus, phosphates, iron, aluminum, calcium, and fluorides. Here are all the counties in this region, or in this county. I'm not going to read them all to you. I think there's one of the big ones is the Natchez Trace Parkway goes through there. There's the Williamsport Wildlife Management Area, the I hope I pronounce this correctly, the Yanhili Wildlife Management Area. So there's some pretty areas to go, a lot of rural areas to explore and investigate. So let's go on and talk about our presentation for the evening. So we're going to talk about public transportation. As you can tell, I am sitting in a bus to celebrate this presentation. We're going to, let me tell you about Ken. and his very interesting past. So Kent graduated from the University of Rochester in 1965 with a degree in anthropology and several acting honors, and the Russell Mumford Tuttle Award for the proficiency in classical Greek. He is a well-rounded individual. He embarked on an acting career, and he has toured with the San Francisco Mime Troupe during the 1960s in a series of award-winning productions. At the same time, he joined the San Francisco Diggers, organizing street rallies, creating local daily free food and park events. The Diggers organized the first Haight-Ashbury free medical clinic, and there's a version of that still exists there. He became interested in clean energy issues in 1968 when he converted a 1951 Chevy pickup to run on natural gas, intending to run it on some form of biomethane, which I'm very impressed with. In the 1970s, he worked on an organic farm in Maine, where he started an organic food marketing co-op with local farmers. In the late 70s, he returned to San Francisco, where he was hired by the San Francisco Art Commission as the CETA artist to organize community performing events. And this evolved into a professional acting career, which moved him to the top ranks of theater in San Francisco, and then to Los Angeles in 1987, where he worked with major theaters as well as in television and film. He was also an English teacher for the Los Angeles Unified School District. As retirement approached, he volunteered with the Sierra Club in Beyond Coal campaign, and after a victory in the campaign to get LA off of coal, he moved over to working with the club on the LA County Electric Bus Coalition, and inside of a year won the LA Metro's commitment to transportation, or to transition all the buses to their service area to battery electric by 2030. He organized 3 electric car events in Watts and helped found the Watts Clean Air and Energy Committee, which is bringing rooftop solar to Watts and helping residents enter union apprenticeship programs in clean energy field. Today, he lives in Knoxville with his daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren, plus 3 dogs. And together, they are working on an energy efficient upgrade to their restored Victorian home and growing a fair portion of their food supply in raised beds in their backyard. He is organizing an electric car event in East Knoxville in collaboration with SEED and a prominent environmental justice organization, and he serves as the executive committee of the Harvey Broom Group for the Tennessee chapter of the Sierra Club. What a well-rounded individual. Thank you, Kent, for joining us tonight. We look forward to listening to your presentation on how we can be better stewards of our environment and encourage our local commissioners and local officials to move toward public electric vehicles. Thank you. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. That's more attention I've gotten in a long time. That was great. I'm going to share my screen. Is it time for me to do that?
Yes.
I guess it is. Okay. Okay. I'm sharing my screen now. And Okay. So yes, this is great fun. I'm really happy to be here with the Middle Tennessee group and to share what's going on. By the way, a lot of people on this Zoom meeting are leaders in vehicle electrification. So I look forward to the conversation afterwards because if I get anything wrong, I'm sure you'll correct me. My thesis here, this is going to come in three parts. My thesis is that electric vehicles are really taking off right now. Wait a minute, let me just go back there. Yeah, electric vehicles are really taking off right now, but they might need some help, especially here in Tennessee. Now, when I get to part two, I'm going to talk about a specific situation in Tennessee, both the drawbacks and the advantages, and then finally for part three, we'll talk about stuff we can actually do. Now here, this is, and you might have seen articles like this in the newspapers over the past couple of weeks, the S-curve. What you see on your screen, that especially the blue line there, is an S-curve, and that is basically an abstract representation of the technology curve when new technology comes in, and it's how it gets adopted. And you can see starting out over on the left there, it's very low, and it scarcely shows any increase. And then there's a certain point, and it's right where that vertical line that says partial potential appears there. And that's where things really start taking off. According to this article and this study with the University College of London's Institute for Sustainable Resources, that's where we are right now. We're on the verge of a big takeoff in electric vehicle adoption. And we're going to see some specific instances of that when we go on. And this is the kind of a distillation of the findings of this study in London. Recent EV growth rates are consistent with the S-curve. And if the S-curve pans out and things go that way, then it'll be consistent with the goals of the Paris Agreement. The report finds that a rapid transition is underway and appears to be unstoppable. However, and this is the important point, the focus of the report turns from demonstrating the rapid uptake of EVs towards the need for the right policies and investments to support and accelerate the transition. And that's where we all come in. Now, I don't want to spend much time on this. This is a report that came out last month, commissioned by the federal government, was spearheaded by Chuck Schumer and Sherrod Brown. And it's a study that basically was commissioned to say, what do we need to do to get all the transit fleet in the country electrified by 2030? And they came back to them with this study that says, well, it's going to cost between 56 and 89 billion dollars to do it. And I recommend that you look at the study. Stephanie, is the link for this going into the chat? I want to make sure that this is available to people. The CTE study here.
It will be up there in just a minute. It's there.
Okay, great. And this is basically the breakdown of costs, but we don't need to spend too much time on it. The actual buses, down here where my cursor is, that's 19 billion for the buses, 15 billion for charging infrastructure. And these two up here are about demand response. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but buses will be used to connect through vehicle to grid connection to enable the utility to use the electricity from the buses and for the bus company to save money on electricity. So here are some examples that are very germane to our situation. And this article is called Flipping the Switch. And I hope we'll get that link up there too, so you can look at it. This is a real readable article, but notice that, did you ever see the movie Fargo? Well, this is the town where that movie was shot. The West Fargo Public Schools got a state grant along with contributions from North Dakota's Cass County Electric Cooperative and G&T Minnesota Power. That's Minnesota and Dakota combined. So look what you've got there. You've got a grant from the state. You've got a grant from a local rural electric cooperative and from a larger utility. And that's important to remember because this is a small rural county here and they don't have a lot of money. So they need help buying this electric school bus, which costs twice as much as the diesel school bus, but with money from the utilities and from the state, the taxpayers are not unduly burdened. And the local electric co-op also gets an assurance of a steady demand for its electricity, and small rural co-ops are often very concerned about that. Part of that same program has a pilot program whereby this bus was charged with 100% wind energy. North Dakota, how about that? So here is another report, this from the Union of Concerned Scientists, and it's specifically about how electric utility investment in truck and bus charging can spur electrification. Now, one of the questions it responds to is, what happens if all these huge vehicles with enormous batteries hook up to the grid? Isn't that going to fry the grid? Isn't that going to raise utility rates? Well, here they're showing a map of the United States with the grids in the United States vary in the amount of clean energy they provide. So notice this little graphic here, this little list of numbers, and it shows the average CO2 emissions of different kinds of buses. Diesel, 2,680 grams per mile, natural gas, 2,364 grams per mile. An electric bus is way down with 1,078 grams per mile. Now, of course, the bus doesn't directly emit those grams per mile, but the power plant that provides the electricity that charges the bus does. So they've figured that out. Now look at these different utilities here. Out in California, they've got a very clean grid. So there, an electric bus will only create 609 grams per mile. And look at the state of New York up here, only 347 grams per mile. Now the dirtiest utilities in the country are right in the middle here: Colorado, Nebraska, Illinois, and they're roughly around 1,500 grams per mile. But still, that's quite a bit. The 1,000 grams per mile for an electric bus is quite a bit less. So even in the dirtiest part of the country, for electrical energy, an electric bus is quite a bit better. Here in Tennessee, there we are. That's the TVA service area right there, 1,257 grams per mile. Again, with an electric, with a diesel bus at 2,600 grams per mile, an electric bus is way better. And this study recommends a whole bunch of things that we can do to help utility programs spur electric driving. But I just want to emphasize these three right in the middle. First, set fair commercial rates that account for truck and bus charging and provide incentives for grid services. Now, this is something that's actually happening right here in the TVA service area. TVA, during its November board meeting, voted to eliminate what they call the high volume demand charge. And that's a charge for when you say own a factory or something and you cut in a whole bunch of electric motors, they will charge you an extra charge beyond just the cost of electricity for the high demand, which heats up the transformers and insulators on the grid, and means that more frequent grid maintenance has to happen, which is a cost. So they charge customers for it. Well, the same thing happens with DC fast chargers, which you've seen out on the freeways perhaps, or at a shopping mall, but they are eliminating the demand charge for that. And one of the things we should advocate is for our local power companies to eliminate the retail version of it. So TVA eliminated the wholesale demand charge for electric charging, and local utilities need to eliminate the retail version. Here in Knoxville, KUB has already done that. Second, coordinate and leverage multiple funding sources. And the funding sources that I showed you, state and utility, we should remember that, because that's what we need to do here in Tennessee. And later on, I'll show you that it's just now starting to happen. Set minimum charging system capabilities to enable managed charging. Now, managed charging is a little bit too nerdy a subject to this call, but it basically means that some utilities have time of use rate systems, so that if you charge late at night during off-peak hours, you get a lower rate for the electricity. And school districts could do that. Charging up school buses late at night would mean that they could get a cut rate on the electricity and save even more money for their school district. This is TVA's two-pager about what they're doing to spur electric vehicle adoption. called Breaking the Barriers to Electric Vehicle Adoption. And now right down here where I'm wiggling my arrow, that's the board meeting. November 2020, the board approved the development of a new EV policy with an optional EV rate. That's what I was talking about, getting rid of that demand charge to make fast charging cheaper. Now also, over here under expanding EV availability and offerings, they're working with automakers, city governments, transit agencies to bring EV investments to the region. And we'll see later on, they're actually putting money into helping local entities adopt electric vehicles. They say they're creating an experiential all-electric ride service to entice potential buyers. I don't really know what that is, but it sounds enticing. Now here is the second page. They're increasing consumer awareness, and this is one thing I think they're doing pretty well. They've got an EV website. Go to tva.org/EV, and there's a lot of great information, especially for people who are thinking about getting an electric vehicle and they're uncertain. TVA's website gives them a lot of resources to help them figure out what to do. It's a good job. And also, they're working with TDEC and TDOT to create a charging infrastructure across the state. And they're especially working on DC fast chargers on our freeway systems so that every major artery will have a DC fast charger every 50 miles, and this will happen over the next 3 years. Their goal, and they share this with TDEC, is to have 200,000 EVs on the road in Tennessee by 2028. There's about 11,000 now. Later on, we might question this and think, well, this is actually not that ambitious. And we'll talk about that. Okay, that's part one. Electric vehicles are about to take off, and in the local governments and in the national governments, they're making it happen. Now, what about in Tennessee? Have you ever heard the mayor or some elected official brag about how we're clean energy leaders or solar leaders or EV leaders? Well, here's Dave Flessner in the Chattanooga Times, but I think he's a pretty good writer, actually. I like Dave's articles. But one official says, Tennessee is emerging as a leader in EVs. Well, I question that, and I'm going to present you an up-to-date study to ask ourselves, well, how much of a leader are we, in fact? This is the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, and this report was published back in February, so it's pretty up to date. They've got a scorecard on all the states. How great are their policies for helping EV adoption? And here is a graphic of their results, and you'll note California is the best state in the union for EVs, and this is not very big news. But they've divided the states into 6 groups here. And these are the leaders, and the followers up here. And notice the state of Tennessee, we are number 20. Now that's not 20 out of 48. They own only 31 states here. And you'll notice there's a rank of 29 occurred 3 different times. So there's really 31 states surveyed in the District of Columbia. And so we're 20 out of 31. So according to the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, we ain't no electric vehicle leaders. But look at the specific scores here. I'm going to move this around up here. Notice that California at number 1 gets 91 points. And notice that the state that's number 2, New York State, only gets 63 points. Now, if you had a midterm and you got 91 points on it, you'd consider that you pretty much got an A, and 63.5 points would kind of feel more like, well, an F, or at least a D minus. So there's a big difference between California and all the other states, and they evaluated the score in terms of planning and goals. How much is the state actually planning for electric vehicles? Do they give incentives? Is the transportation system efficient? How's the grid? How green is it? How much carbon are you emitting with your electric vehicles and so forth? Let's go on to the next page so that we can see the state of Tennessee ranking at 20. And we get a score of 30.5 out of 100. So we're pretty darn low. I don't know why they gave us a score of 9.5 on incentives. Tennessee doesn't give you any incentives for electric driving. The only one listed by Plug-in America is an HOV lane sticker. And here in Knoxville, I can't even find an HOV lane. And they actually charge you an extra $100 when you register your car if it's electric. So they actually punish electric drivers. They should get a negative score there. But anyway, um, the report finally has some recommendations. What should we all do um, to get our state into the process of developing a more robust and electric vehicle policy? Well, first, offer on the hood incentives. Give people money to get an EV. And they offer generous incentives in California and New York, and they offer you nothing here. Codified targets for EVs. Well, as we saw, we are actually kind of doing that. The TVA and TDEC say we're going to have 200,000 EVs in the state by 2028. Well, that's a target. And they also have targets for the deployment of EV chargers. We're encouraging them to put EV chargers in low-income communities so that poor people don't get left out of the EV revolution. Allow utilities to make investments to support EV charging infrastructure and to implement EV rates. Well, as we've seen, TVA is doing that, and we need to petition our local power companies to cooperate with them and eliminate that high volume demand charge. Encourage grid scale decarbonization by establishing clean energy and energy efficiency targets. We're behind on this. We need to tell TVA to get off coal by 2030 and to make a date certain for eliminating all fossil fuels. Well, they sure haven't done that yet. And the various departments of the Sierra Club are getting ready to bug them about that. Set a greenhouse gas emission reduction goal statewide. We certainly don't have that. I know Knoxville has our 80% by 2050 goal, but the state doesn't yet have anything like that. This is another report by the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy together with Atlas Public Policy. It's probably the coolest thing that I have to share with you tonight. The upshot of the report is in 3 sections here. First, the national EV market is poised for rapid growth. As I showed you at the beginning with the S-curve, they agree with the same thing. We're on the verge of an onslaught of EVs, and that's great. But the Southeast is behind in all EV aspects, except manufacturing. We're building electric cars here. We build the Nissan Leaf in Smyrna. We build the Cadillac Lyriq, and we're going to in Chattanooga, along with the VW ID4. And I think there's even an Acura all-electric sports car that's going to be manufactured in that same GE plant in Chattanooga. We're building electric cars for the other states, and we don't have the policies that let the citizens of Tennessee enjoy those cars. And the report also concludes that EV adoption would be a great economic boon for us all. Now, why do some states lead and other states behind? Well, these 12 states have ZEV programs, zero emission vehicle programs. And 60% of the EVs in the country are in these 12 states. They were led by California, and other states followed along. The Southeast has currently invested 85 million government funding and 34 million utility funding for transportation electrification. The government funding is 4%, and the utility funding is 1% of the national total. So that's an area in which we are indeed very far behind. We'll talk about this more later. In the third part, I'll show you a study that proves that EVs do indeed put downward pressure on utility rates. And it's basically because most EVs are charged late at night when demand is low. EV manufacturing commitments, Volkswagen and Nissan, Drive Electric Tennessee has a real plan for statewide EV and EV charging adoption. We are 33rd in the nation in EV sales and 40th in DC fast charging. So we indeed have a long way to go to catch up. This is, again, just more information that basically says we're low ranking in all EV adoption measurements. But we do have some money coming into transit programs, and we're going to talk about that in a minute because that is a bit of good news for Tennesseans. Here is an example of a state. Let's back that up there. This is an example of a state that's really doing the right thing. Governor Newsom in California. By 2035, all new cars and passenger trucks sold in the state will be zero emission vehicles. And with current state of technology, that'll basically be electric cars. And by the way, France, Germany, and Norway also have similar laws in place. I think the United Kingdom does too. So imagine that. You can still drive your old polluting car after 2035, but if you want to buy a new car, it's going to have to be electric. 50% of California's greenhouse gas emissions comes from cars and trucks, so that's why they're doing that there. Let's continue here to Norway. Now, Norway is the miracle of electric vehicle adoption. Look at this statistic. 330,000 registered battery electric vehicles in Norway. Now remember, here in Tennessee, we have a goal, an ambitious goal to get 200,000 electric vehicles in our state. And we have more people in Tennessee than they have in Norway. In last year, battery electric vehicles got a 54% market share. So Norway is going great guns towards electric vehicles. And how the hell did they do that? Well, here is a list of Norway's policies, and I'm not going to go through the whole list here, but again, you should be provided in the chat with links here, so you can actually study this. All this is from Norway, the government of Norway's webpage, which is in English, as you can see. And basically, you get a hefty sales tax when you buy a car in Norway, but if it's electric, it's eliminated. And also you get on their toll roads. They got lots of toll roads, but you don't pay a thing if you're in an electric car. And you also get free passage on the numerous ferry boats in Norway's transit system. So, okay, let's go on to part 3 here and talk about a few things where our advocacy can make the most difference. And one is get TVA back to having in-person listening sessions like we have here. This is my friend Betty Johnson testifying before the TVA board a couple of years back. Whoops, let's go back. Here is an historic event that happened in our state last week. And it's the arrival of the first electric school bus in the state of Tennessee in Washington County. And now look at all these guys lined up here. Behind the podium, I don't know if you'll recognize him, but that's David Salyers, a commissioner for TDEC, Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. And this young man sitting here underneath Washington County, he is Jared Adams, the assistant director of schools, and this guy out here with the big red Donald Trump looking tie, he is Jerry Boyd, the director of schools. And the assembled august personages here are pretty interesting. Next to the director of schools is this guy, Justin Meyerhofer from TVA. It's very convenient that he's got the words TVA right over his head there. And he's the VP of Federal Affairs. So you got TVA, and then over here in the gray suit, you had Jeff Dykes from Bright Ridge, and that's the electric cooperative in the area. Now, remember North Dakota, Fargo? Well, they had the local cooperative, they had the big utility, and they had the state. Well, there's David Salyers from the state, there's Bright Ridge, the local utility, and there's TVA, the big utility. Now, one last thing, this man here in the middle, and I'm going to get to talking about the woman also, but this is Richard Lee, the district sales representative for Lion Buses. And Lion is the manufacturer of this marvelous electric bus. And this is Jody Jones from the school board sitting at the end here. Now, after they finish all giving speeches and they cut this red ribbon you see here, then they brought us all into the bus and we all took a ride. And here we are taking a ride in the bus. And that gentleman there is Richard Lee from Lion Buses. And across the aisle from him is my friend Nancy Bell, a Sierra Club member, and they're getting each other's phone numbers there because Nancy and Bill Cornrich, who's on this call, are going to go up to Hawkins County and try and foment the same thing up there, get Hawkins County to electrify its school buses as well. And I recommend that you all do the same thing with the utility and the school district where you live. I know I'm going to. I'm just reminding you about Fargo Public Schools and how they did the same thing. A couple of electric co-ops financing together with a state grant. And that's exactly how we got the bus in Washington County. It's the first, it's certainly not the last. Now, so that's one thing we can do, advocate before school boards. Also, we should advocate before transit districts. And I'm proud to say, here we are in Knoxville Area Transit. That's our new electric bus. And you see that driving around Knoxville. It's not actually carrying any passengers yet because they're training the drivers how to use the regenerative braking. If you're an electric car driver, you know that when you slow down or you go downhill, it actually charges the battery and gives you more range. But there's an art to driving it, and the drivers have to learn how to do that. The mechanics have to learn how to fix it, and they got to install the charging infrastructure. Now here, this is from Knoxville's city website, and it's telling us the news about this bus here. Now the bus is the first of 12 that will be arriving between June and September, and they'll be carrying people around in January of next year. 3 times more efficient than standard diesel, and they plan to have the entire 71 bus fleet running on electricity in about 8 years, before 2030. And that'll really help Knoxville achieve our greenhouse gas reduction goals. Look at the financing here. The purchase of the 12 buses totals nearly $13 million, but we Knoxville taxpayers are not paying that whole amount. Most of it comes from the Federal Transit Administration, with $1.2 million coming from TDOT, and the city will match it with $1.4 million. Again, the employees and the drivers are training on how to handle this right now, and I look forward to January when I'm going to take a ride in our new electric bus. This is a little display that I took this picture in Cookeville at an EV show. This is a display of what's happening in the Upper Cumberland. This is a program that's spearheaded by Tennessee Tech, TTU, and Dr. Pinjen Chen is sort of the brains behind the whole thing. He's a very interesting man. And they've got an electric I don't know, call it a jitney bus. This is blowing it up here a little bit. And also notice that they've got car chargers already installed in Spencer, Sparta, Smithville, Lafayette, Carthage, Livingston. There's a Sam's Club in Cookeville with a whole bunch of DC fast chargers and a couple of level 2 chargers as well. So the EV revolution is coming. Now, I want to briefly touch on this thing. Won't more electric vehicles cause electric rates to go up? People ask me this all the time. All you darn electric cars are going to make things more expensive for the rest of us. It's going to drive up rates. Well, this study from Synapse Energy said actually that's not true, and they'll explain why. They examined 2 California utilities, PG&E in the north and Southern California Edison in the south. And on the graph here, you can see the adoption rate for EVs between 2012 and 2017. So that in 2017, the PG&E service area had over 140,000 electric cars. And in Southern California Edison, there were something like 110,000. What did that do to rates? Well, what they found was that most EV charging takes place at night during off-peak hours. And the difference is very stark. Here, the off-peak hours, 80%, 75% of the charging takes place. And during peak hours and part peak hours, let me explain that. In California, you have a tiered system of rates. If you don't use much electricity, you'll pay a lower rate. This encourages conservation. If you use a whole bunch of electricity, you'll pay a higher rate. But to accommodate electric vehicles, they've introduced time of use rates. And this gives you the lowest rate if you charge late at night or off-peak hours like during the weekend. And you notice over here with PG&E, the number of chargers, electric vehicles charging during peak hours is actually half if you've got time of use rates. So those time of use rates are influencing people to charge even less during peak hours and even more during off-peak hours. Now, what does that mean? That means that the cost of providing that electricity to electric vehicles is way less than the revenue that the utility is collecting for the electricity provided to those users. So that means that electric drivers are providing wealth to the utilities and enabling them to lower the residential rates. And that's why EVs put downward pressure on utility rates. They're helping the neighbors. When you plug in, everybody saves on their bills. This is called 10 Things. And Stephanie, can we have a link to this? Because in the interest of time, I want to just jump past it. On my list, it's called 10 Things. And these are 10 things that you can do that really help the climate and reduce greenhouse gases. And I'm not going to go over them all, but most of them are matters of policy and require organized advocacy from people like us. So just to review, class, school districts and transit districts go electric. That's what we want to advocate. Municipal utilities and rural electric co-ops need to provide incentives for vehicles and for charging infrastructure. Right now, Knoxville is a leader in this. I got $400 rebate for installing a home charger here, and I think Holston Electric does the same thing. Arrange presentations by manufacturers like Lion and other electric bus manufacturers to your school boards and your transit districts. Provide on-the-hood financing for EVs and for electric chargers. I'm advocating that Knoxville Utilities Board actually give a rebate for people who get electric cars, and I'll show you about such a rebate from another part of the country. Tell TVA to make a clear commitment to getting off fossil fuels by a date certain, consistent with the Biden administration goals and with the Paris Accord, and help your own friends go electric with reliable information about new and used vehicles, and by your example. To support your argument, remember, EV adoption drives down utility rates. You're being kind to your gasoline-powered neighbors when you get an electric car. Low-tax Republicans love them electric buses. For the life of the vehicle, they're cheaper than fossil burners. Keep those tax rates low, y'all. And Tennessee is not a leader, but boy, we could be. More electric vehicles on the road creates jobs and supports Tennessee-based industries. And everybody agrees the climate is in crisis. Republicans, Democrats, everybody. So don't be afraid to use that climate argument. And here is the best electric vehicle incentive I have found. This is from Charge Up LA, from the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. They'll pay $1,500 rebates to people who register a used electric vehicle in the service area. You can get a used Nissan Leaf for under $10,000. So that rebate really makes a difference for poor folks. Let's help them get into it. You don't actually have to be an LADWP account holder. If your landlord or your landlady is, you apply for the rebate, you get it if you're registering it within the service. What about those polling questions? I thought that was interesting. And Jack, you had those, if you have those polling questions accessible, why not ask people and we can just do a show of hands here.
We can do that. Question 1. What type vehicle do you drive? You got 4 answers, possibly. Pick one. Gasoline powered? Hybrid? Oh, well, okay, sorry. Gasoline powered, that would be me too.
That'd be me.
Hybrid, conventional like Prius hybrid, gas electric. Anybody? Anybody have a plug-in hybrid?
Charlie High has a plug-in hybrid, I think. Is that right, Charlie?
Well, he'll have to unmute himself if he's on here.
Well, he can raise his hand. That's what he's doing. You see him raising his hand there. I think he's saying, "Yeah, me, I got a hybrid."
Okay.
Where do you find the hand to raise?
You see the little thing at the bottom
Turn on
that says
your video.
reactions? It says reactions at the bottom.
Yeah.
Then you can say raise hand and lower hand once you click on reactions.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we have one more. Is there not one more, Jack? Is that
Well,
all?
the last choice is pure electric.
Or no, there's one more. There's one more choice. Do you take public transportation?
Ooh.
Do you not have a car? Do you get to use this public transportation?
Fair enough. Oh, here's somebody with a leaf.
I would take public transportation if there were more in Nashville.
Yeah.
Good point.
So we have in the chat here, we do have a couple of answers that people have put in. David Bordenkircher's gasoline, and Ursulon has a Volt, which is a Chevy electric.
Yes, it's a plug-in hybrid. Yeah.
Sorry, it's plug-in hybrid. And Joanne McIntosh says she has a Leaf, which is a pure electric.
Yep.
Which is
Thanks for making the world better.
They're fun.
Okay, well,
And my family actually has two.
does anyone have any questions for Jack?
Oh, Joe has a an answer too, that he has an all electric vehicle. Doesn't specify.
Yes, he does. I know that about Joe.
And Joanne says gas, but she does car sharing with two people.
Oh, look, and Kadim says, "I have legs. I walk everywhere."
She does.
That's zero emission transportation. That's good.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Are the electric vehicles, do they tend to be smaller vehicles asked from a tall person with a super tall husband that has to put seat extenders on normal cars and has to drive an SUV because he can't fit in anything else?
Well, okay, I'm going to say that electric cars are perfectly fine for large husbands. I'm 6'3", and I fit into my Nissan Leaf very comfortably. It has great leg room. And by the way, now with a huge assortment of electric vehicles coming onto the market, electric vehicles are coming in all sizes. But I'll say that I've been very happily surprised by the amount of space that's inside my Nissan Leaf. I can take a 10-speed bike and throw it in the back and close the hatch, and I fit in there perfectly fine with my ridiculously long legs. So I don't think you need to choose a gasoline-powered car if you're big. The electric vehicles are going to accommodate you just as well. And their electric SUVs and pickup trucks are coming into the market this year and next year. So there's no real problem with size. If you can have an electric school bus, you can have an electric big car, and they're coming.
Maybe Joanne Logan wants to unmute herself and expand on her answer, which is she has an electric bike.
Yes, let's hear about the bike. That's great.
I do. In fact, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we
Yes.
Yeah. Ken, if you remember that time we went to that electric thing over at Whole Foods where they had and like I rode in your car, but then I gravitated over to the electric bike tents, and I was more fascinated by them than I was by the cars. So back they're great. Back in March when I was looking for I guess it was May when I was looking for a bike, you couldn't find a bike. I mean, a new bike, they were just all sold out. And so I was at River Sports, and they had these pedal assist electric bikes. And if you haven't tried one, they are the coolest things because they're not those great big heavy electric bikes that you can hardly pick up. It's like a regular bicycle, but it just has this 3-speed, a little button you push to give you a boost when you hit that headwind or a really high hill. And and one charge lasts you a week. You only have to charge it once a week. They're amazing.
I want one.
Oh,
Yeah,
they're
that's
amazing. They're wonderful.
great. Yeah, when you start exploring the options, there are really a lot of things you can do to stop burning gasoline. And I've found that ever since I started driving electric, it's just more fun, cheaper, less hassle all the way around.
I have a question about traveling across country in one, since there's
Right.
probably not a whole lot of electric stations available at this point. Do you have to plan your trip accordingly? I mean, how does that work if I was to drive here to New Jersey, where I'm from?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Good question. You do have to plan your trip. And actually, hey, Joe, why don't you take that question? It sounds like,
All right.
it looks like
Well, I'm
you
from
got
New
an
York
answer.
originally, and one of the first things I did in the Tesla was to drive from Memphis to New York and back. My second trip was Memphis to Canada, just to demonstrate it can go outside this country. And as far as planning goes, a lot of the stations are already available on GPS within the car, or you can go to PlugShare. And if you don't have a Tesla, there's other fast chargers that are networked all along the interstates that'll take you to New York or New Jersey, no problems. You should have all you have to do is just plan it out so that you use the restroom when you charge, and then make your visits to eat coordinated well, and you wouldn't really use that much more time to go to New Jersey and back as compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle.
How long does it take to charge fully when you stop?
Well, you're going to change how you charge. So, for example, in a conventional car, you would probably go towards empty, and then you go pretty much to full. Whereas in an electric car, you want to charge from the 1/3 to 80% area, which is going to give you the highest rate of speed. So, for example, I'm in Memphis. So my first stop will be in Jackson, Tennessee, which is about 90 minutes away, roughly. I have to use the restroom. I stop, I plug in. The amount of distance that I just commuted, the amount of time it takes me to use the restroom, get another drink, get back to the vehicle, I've covered that mileage. So it's all you're doing is banking your 2-hour drive time and just say, I'm going to go ahead and charge up where the battery can take the fastest rate, and then just stop it. You don't have to go to full. It'll take forever. And I say forever, I'm exaggerating, but it takes a longer time. So just go to 80%. When you get down to about, 1/4, 1/3, stop, recharge just for that small amount of time. And it doesn't increase your time that much to go those long distances.
Great. Thank you, Joe. That's a very good explanation. Somebody's got background noise there, so
Somebody has their TV on.
mute yourself if there we go. Thank you.
Yeah, can I add two things to what Joe just said? Even though I don't have an EV, I pay attention. There's the 80% is important because the last 10% or last 20% of the battery just is a lot slower. So that's why most people recommend, charging up to 80%. Also, the batteries last longer when you do that. The other thing is the mapping with locations of chargers is very good. There's another application called a Better Route Planner, which is really very fantastic, and it's very good at showing the locations of the chargers and adding in additional factors to your planning so that you can know exactly where you want to stop and what other activities you want to do along the way. And that application's got a very high rating by the people that use it.
Thank you. I didn't know that. That's great to hear.
This is Charlie. Hi. I raised my hand. I wasn't allowed to talk yet. I just had a little picky little comment about your presentation that I disagreed with, and that was that you shouldn't have to pay the $100 fee for an electric car registration.
I agree.
And no, you said that, right. I disagree because
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
the $100 is to repair the roads because you're not buying gas. And if you don't buy gas, they use gas tax to repair all the roads. So as I understand it, the $100 goes into the gas tax.
Yes.
That's all.
No, I did know that, Charlie, and actually, I'm perfectly willing to pay my fair share to keep the roads fixed. But the $100 as my share of as a citizen of Tennessee is far greater than what would be needed to repair the roads. And right now, there aren't enough electric car drivers in Tennessee to make a difference to the road fund. The road fund is underfunded because cars have gotten more efficient, but they've never raised the gas tax. So if they want to charge me some money, I pay it. I don't really care. But I think what they really need to do is raise the gas tax because that would dissuade people from polluting forms of transportation and it would help fix the roads. But anyway, thanks for bringing that up.
I do agree with that. I do agree with that. They should raise the gas tax to discourage people from driving gas cars, which is what I drive. But I ride my bicycle most places, and
there you go.
That's human.
That's the best. Great, thanks, Charlie. That's so. Hey, Antoinette, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have, I guess, more of a commenty question, and that is, in traveling, I'm originally from California, and I just was out there, and I walked by my high school, and it's the whole, what was the teacher's parking lot is just filled with charging stations. And I ran into a couple who was coming to plug in their car. And I go, well, how do you like your car? Oh, great. We've only spent $2.59 on gas in the last 6 months. And they loved it and everything like that. And we asked them all these questions. And I remember going to Virginia and staying at this hotel, and there must have been 15 charging stations along this one side of the parking lot. And I guess my point is on this is, if people see, if we can get our governments to put these in, or private businesses or whatever it is to put this in, and people see these, they get that. They go, okay, they're everywhere and they're the best parking spaces. And I think it will encourage people and give people less question like, oh, how am I going to run out of gas? You know, they should be at every rest stop. They should be at, it should encourage stores or restaurants to put them in there so people will be going and eating there or buying there or whatever that is. It was so amazing for me to see that and saying we need those everywhere. So make it like the in thing.
Well, that's the advocacy I recommend for us here in Tennessee. And like I said, with David Sawyer's and TDEC and the every 50 miles, they're starting to do that. But because utility policy is broken up with all these local power companies, we don't have the vast utility territories that they have in California. You kind of got to go utility by utility and bug them to put those chargers in at various places.
What about the stores, you know, Walmarts and things like that? I mean, it just seems like.
Well, the Sam's Club in Cookeville has a whole array, and it's very close to the freeway. So you can get off the freeway and charge yourself up very quickly at the Sam's Club, and both for Teslas and for all the other cars like Leafs and Bolts and stuff like that. They have both kinds of chargers there. But yeah.
I think Dennis, excuse me.
Sorry.
Dennis has raised his hand. Dennis, did you have a question or comment?
Dennis has good stuff to say. Where is Dennis?
Yes. I want to say that I agree with what Charlie High said, and let me explain why. There's folks that don't like electric cars and that think electric cars are getting a free ride, and that, you know, for various, we all know the problems of those that drive gasoline cars that don't want to see electric cars getting a free ride. We ought to think in terms of incentives to buy an electric car, whether it be a rebate or a tax benefit, but then at the same time a payment for use of the road. So the rebate would encourage people to buy electric cars, but then they still would pay a reasonable amount for usage of the roads. I actually did a very detailed analysis of this about 5 years ago when the state of Tennessee was looking at adding a much higher fee for electric cars and also for hybrid cars. And we convinced them to completely drop the fee for hybrid cars because they're obviously paying a gas tax when they buy gasoline. And we got them to reduce the fee that you pay annually on your license. And the fee that people pay is equivalent to what they would pay in the gas tax. I forget the calculation. I think it was 15,000 miles on a car with 15 miles per gallon mileage. So no, I'm sorry, it was 25 mile a gallon mileage of a gasoline car. So it's a reasonable amount. And you think about all of the things that are involved with maintaining a road. It's not just potholes, it's taking care of accidents. It's sweeping the road when it's dirty. It's doing new construction. There were a lot of details in my analysis, and there's a continual fight by ICE car users that want electric cars to pay more. So if you separate the incentive, which is a justifiable incentive, from the per mileage charge, the annual fee or a per mileage charge, that's a reasonable approach. And the incentive would definitely encourage growth of EVs. So that's my view.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
I have a question as far as, I'm just trying to think of ways to make it easier to have one of these. I'm a member of AAA, and they're really good at putting out maps. If you want to take a trip, they'll tell you, where to, you tell them what you need, and they'll tell you where to stay or whatever. Are they in on this, being able to tell people where the electric charging stations are and what is next to them that they could do or eat or whatever?
Well, I think Joe mentioned PlugShare, and that's what I use. When David mentioned another one, which I'm going to look for, but PlugShare is on your smartphone, and it's got a map function in it. Also, the car itself has a map on the screen, and it shows you where the nearest car chargers are. So if there's a car charger near you, you can find it, and also you can just sit before you take a trip. You can sit at home, open up PlugShare, and plan out where the chargers are so that you can go that way.
Great. I guess I'm just focusing on Ma and Pa who don't have phones or even apps or how to use apps. They've been using AAA for 58 years, and it just seems like if they're not, they should be in on this, and that could encourage some people who aren't, let's say, up to date to buy an electric car. Just a thought.
It's a good idea that you can do that with the map on the screen in the car. Now, AAA could, I have no idea what resources AAA has, but if AAA produced a map that you folded out like the old mom and pop map, then the PlugShare beats it, because PlugShare will tell you if the charger is in use, so that you're less likely to go to a charger and then have to wait 45 minutes for the person who's already charging to finish up. Instead, you can go to a charger, hopefully nearby, that is not in use, and use that one. So it's much better to go electronic with this thing than it is to use the old map, although I'm kind of an old pop myself, so I sympathize with his comments. I think it's great what you're asking, Antoinette, because what you're doing is you're like poking around, finding out, well, what would it mean to drive an electric car? What would you do? And I remember,
for the elderly, and their maps are really they're very good. They're not like a fold out map. It's just like step by step by step. It's a little thing, and I'm just thinking.
Oh, I know what you mean. And they plan, it's a trip planning thing they do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's free.
Well,
Yeah.
you can do that with the electronic thing, but you're right. You have to have a smartphone to do it.
Mhm.
But I remember when I got my electric car in 2015, and certainly I was elderly at the time myself, but I did it basically because I'm a pissed off environmentalist, and in California, the gas pumps in California have a little sign that say, this pump disseminates a product that is known by the state of California to cause cancer. So one day I was filling up my old Toyota Corolla and I was looking and I would say, I'm watching this machine suck the money out of my bank account and tell me I'm getting cancer just by standing there. What on earth am I doing? And so I was determined to get an electric car no matter what. I didn't care if I spent all my money. I just felt like an idiot for burning gasoline. And so I saved up a bunch of money and I went and I got in touch with one of the main electric car advocates in town, a guy named Paul Scott. And I talked, and I just called his number, and he answered. And I said, I want to buy an electric car, and I need some help. Can I ask you some questions? He said, sure, I love it. And so I said, well, I'm thinking of buying a Nissan Leaf, and he said, don't buy it. And I said, really? Well, why not? It seemed like a good car. He said, it is. It's a great car, but lease it instead, because you're going to, in 2015, you're going to buy a Nissan Leaf that gets 85 miles. In 4 or 5 years, the electric cars are going to go 300 miles. Nobody's going to want to buy your damn Leaf. So if you lease it, then you won't be stuck with a car nobody wants. And so I did. I leased the car, $2,500 to down payment to start the Leaf. Within 60 days, the California Air Resources Board sent me a check for $2,500. The down payment was free.
Wow.
And then I got a tax credit of $3,500 18 months later. And that equaled all of the $250 a month car payments that I had just made. So for the first year and a half, it was a free car. Now, we don't have anything like that in Tennessee, but it was just a discovery to me that the electric car was a windfall. I was all ready to put my life savings into it just because I felt like such an idiot for burning gasoline. But it turned out it was a huge financial advantage to me. And so in my advocacy, I like to point that out to people, even without all of those rebates. And by the way, the $3,500, that was a federal tax credit. So anybody can get that. You don't have to be in California. But the electric car is an absolute windfall financially. And that was an amazing thing for me to discover. I didn't know that when I got the car.
It's
So
very
what else?
good.
One reason I wanted to ask people if they drove electric is I wanted to find people who are interested in engaging this kind of advocacy and going to school boards and transit districts and prodding them to go electric and reminding them that they would save money by doing so. Anyway, if you want to, Joe, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I did post some links to Tesla's supercharger map. You can see all the different superchargers. So if they're not tech savvy, you can just link to that one page so they can see a big map. And then also, Joanne had a question about charge times, and it should take less than 20 minutes. It should take 15 minutes to do a 200-mile charge on a DC fast charger or a supercharger for the Tesla. And remember, your home is going to be your primary gas station, and you're only going to go on those big trips on a rare occasion. And if it becomes an issue, you could just rent a car for that one trip, and then you could save all the money by local commuting, and you could do it that route as well. So there are options beyond the big trips. You could just stay local more and then just rent the car for the big trip, if that is a concern. But like I said, I've taken it long distances, and it's my primary choice for a vehicle.
Or you can go down to the local high school and just plug in. Once we get all these charging stations in there.
But the main thing is your home. If you can do it in your home, it's like your cell phone. So treat it like your cell phone. You come in and at the end of the night, you plug in, and in the morning you're ready to go. You really never have to worry about range. So you're changing how you look at charging. It's not like a gasoline car. Your home becomes your gas station. And once you start doing that, then range doesn't become an issue. The only time you have to worry about range is if you go into New York or something like that, or New Jersey. And then you plan it out a little bit. You just look at the map, and all the Tesla charges, as well as the Electrify America ones, they're all along the interstate routes. Another thing, somebody asked about Walmart. Walmart partnered with Electrify America, which is a VW program. So a lot of Walmarts are using these DC fast chargers for Electrify America. Target has partnered with Tesla. So now you're seeing a lot of Targets now having superchargers networked in their parking lots. And you're gonna see more of these travel centers that are now embracing electric charging. So Tesla superchargers and others will be at the travel centers where conventional vehicles are usually refueling.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Joe. That's really important. Yeah, I found that to be true too. You know, Antoinette, when we moved here to our house in Knoxville a couple of years ago, I used to go down and charge at the Three Rivers Market where they have a free charger, and I would charge up for free. And then there was a nearby park where I worked out, and I would charge up for free there too. So for the first, I don't know, year we were here, we got free electricity. We never paid for electricity at all. But then we got the home charger. And we found out an interesting thing. I think you'll relate to this, Joe. We decided that we didn't want the free electricity. We'd rather pay for it because it was so much more convenient just to plug it in when we come home and forget about it. We didn't have to go run down to the store and, go make a special trip just to plug in the car. It's so easy and it's very inexpensive. I remember I calibrated it in LA. When I charged my car, I would drive pretty regularly, 1,000 miles a month. It cost me $30 for the electricity. And I figured, well, if I'm going to go down the street, right across from the Trader Joe's was a DC fast charger at an LADWP substation. But I thought, why go down there? I'd be saving $1. And I have to sit around in a dark alley waiting for the damn thing to charge up. I'd rather charge at home and have a glass of wine. Spend $1. What the hell?
Yeah. You did have one other, I'm sorry, Bill, but I know there was one other poll question you wanted to ask, which related to advocacy, which is to the effect of how many of us know when our local electric utility board meets?
But it sounds like Bill Corrich is the guy who has already done that research. No, really, bugging your local utility is really a great thing to do, and it's kind of fun. Now, maybe utility board meetings aren't my favorite entertainment experience, but when I go to KUB board meetings, I always learn really interesting things. And KUB is a mid-city, mid-sized city. I'm used to LADWP board meetings, and LADWP is the second largest public utility in the country. And we found out that the commissioners were very approachable. 2 different Sierra Club activists have served on the board of LADWP. And now Susanna Reyes, who's very high ranking on the national political team, is an LADWP commissioner. And before her, Aura Vasquez, who is now running for office in LA, is with a DWP commissioner. So getting Sierra Club members on the board of your local utility is a great idea. And even if they're not there, form relationships with them because they can really do things. We went and advocated for a rebate for home car chargers. They did it. Now Knoxville gives you $400 when you install a home charger. So there's lots of things that they can do. And the utilities know that if they incentivize electric driving, that's an increase in their revenue. And they worry about that. Utility revenue is flat and declining most places these days.
Is it a special plug that you have to have when you charge it at home? Or is it just a 110? Or is it...
Well, there are several answers to that. There are 3 levels of charging. Level 1 is a charger that coils up, and I keep it in the back of my car. and that plugs into my car, and it will plug into a normal wall outlet. But for my 150-mile Nissan Leaf, I think it'd take about 20 hours to charge it up that way. So I have a level 2 charger, which hooks into 240-volt current, like for an electric dryer or something. So we've installed that, and that's what I got the $400 rebate for. And that thing will charge our car up much faster. Now we run 2 electric cars. We pull into the driveway, charge it up, and it's never a problem. We always have fully charged cars waiting for us in the morning. And the level 3 charger is the DC fast charger, which looks like a little white refrigerator that's standing in front of the Walmart or the Sam's Club, and that will charge you up very fast. It actually makes a racket when you charge it up. It starts whirring and making a big noise.
So Kent,
yeah.
Kent, so I went and drove a Nissan Leaf in Knoxville the other day.
Uh-huh.
I went down to the Nissan dealership. Of course, they didn't have one on the lot, you know, but the mechanic had one that he drove, so I drove that. And
which dealership?
The one out on Kingston Pike in Knoxville.
Right, Ted Russell. Yes, yes, I know.
Yeah. So anyway, and you know, so I rode it, you know, and of course we talked about it and blah blah blah. So, and his point, the sales manager and the sales dude both, because we were talking about this.
Did you meet Stan? Stan, the Leaf man, was he there?
No,
I'm sorry.
But anyway, so but their point was this: they said, okay, so VW is coming out with, you know, electric models, Ford's coming out with, you know, the F-150. Is there going to be any? Is there an issue of synchronicity among manufacturers? Like, so in other words, with a level 1, if your car comes with the ability to plug into a wall with a 110 outlet, right? That's cool. But like, so if you have charging stations along the highway, like, so if you have a Tesla, you know, you've got your Tesla system, it works just fine. If you don't have a Tesla, you can't use the Tesla system. Correct?
Oh.
So their concern was, okay, so if Tennessee and other places are building out these systems for fast chargers, will they be able to accommodate, you know, a Ford F-150, a Cadillac this, a VW that, the Subaru Solterra when it comes out, you know, is there going to be, just like you can use a gas pump to put gas in any car, basically?
Are they going to standardize the metal?
Yeah, I mean, is that an issue? I don't know. That's what they told me, and of course I don't really have a clue, but I was curious if that's an issue.
I know those guys out there. Those guys are so good at dealing themselves out of a sales commission. Think what they just did. They talked you out of buying a car. I mean, I can't believe it. There's no problem. Joe, explain it to them. I'm sure you can do it better than I can.
So why? But I mean, their point was about the Tesla, right? So you know, if you don't have a Tesla, you can't use a Tesla charger.
That statement is true. That part of the statement is true. But the fact of the matter is, there's other chargers out there that are tied to non-proprietary standard plugs. And the other thing is that a lot of moves are being made by the state of New Jersey, for example, where they're putting in charging stations and they're saying, hey, Tesla, if you want access, you're going to have to open some stuff up for others. So they're forcing Tesla's hand to get non-proprietary connectors. If you want to install a Tesla supercharger here, you're going to have to put in a non-proprietary one. That's part of the deal. Otherwise, you don't have access. So you're going to see a change now that the market is starting to get more populated. And I agree with Kent tremendously. I don't understand how car salesmen do it. You know, you go in, you say, I want this, and they're trying to take you away from their own business. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I went to the Nissan dealership and said, I'm going to sell you Nissan Leafs. I says, I'll sell it. You know why? Because I want to sell them. And they wouldn't hire me part-time. So I was But anyway, don't worry about the proprietary networks. It will change here in the near future, and demand will change things. Unfortunately, if people don't buy a lot of electric vehicles, they're going to go, see, nobody's buying them. But if people start buying them, that's going to create the demand for more charging. And remember, electricity is everywhere. We already make the electricity. It's the gasoline stations that they have to dig holes and build tanks and build up infrastructure. Electricity is at every business, every home, just about every park. It's just a matter of the wisdom to change the dynamic, how to change the paradigm. And that's the key.
I like. Hey, so here's what I'm going to do. It's already 8:30, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the question time. After we finish the presentation, then we're going to have an open 20 minutes of just chat. So just hold off and let me just it's only 2 minutes. Okay. All right. Well, we're just gonna, normally what we do is what can you do, but Kent just did such an awesome job on his presentation. We're not going to even bother to dig into that because he's already told you what to do. And a deep dive, he's given you tons of links. I hope you're copying and pasting them so that you have them in a Word document before you leave this session, and you can read over them, because a lot of them are very long documents or websites that provide you an enormous amount of information. So please take advantage of that, because once the Zoom call is done, it's going to probably be another week before the YouTube videos up with those links. So grab them now, copy and paste them now so you can read them later. Okay. All right. So let me introduce our fearless leader, Antoinette Olison, our executive committee chairman for Sierra Club Middle Tennessee. And she has a quote and a closing thought for us to think about regarding this electric public transportation.
Okay, well, normally we have a quote that involves what the subject matter is, and it was kind of hard to find quotes about that. So I thought really it's about progress and moving forward. So here's one of the quotes I came up with. Progress is not inevitable. It is up to us to create it.
It is.
From Buckminster Fuller. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete.
Oh, Bucky.
Perfect quote for tonight.
Yes, and here's another one on that same line is, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. That was Socrates. One last one is, progress lies not in enhancing what is, but in advancing toward what will be. And that was a quote by Kahlil Gibran.
And there's
so
a book.
We are all caring about this, and we are all working on all this stuff. And so we are building this. We're coming up with the ideas, and you're giving us new ideas of getting in front of our power companies and things like that. And this is really great. So
If I can throw in my version of that quote, my favorite is a Grook, and Grook. Look it up if you've never heard of it. That you will conquer the present suspiciously fast if you smell of the future and stink of the past.
We hope you have enjoyed this program. The links that were mentioned are in the description below. Be sure to view the Drive Electric Tennessee Tesla Test Drive. If you would like to review any portion, click on the chapter lists in the description. We look forward to seeing you again next month.